Thank you for joining us on our journey here to preserve the history of mixed martial arts. When I wanted to take on this project, I needed help. I brought in one of my favorite matchmakers, Miguel and ADCC, and the MMA detective, Mike Davis. So to do this, we've been able to preserve history. Welcome and enjoy.
Hey, welcome back to the Lights Out Podcast. I am Miguel and ADCC. I am joined by the MMA detective, and we are off on another one of our deep dives as everybody is getting to know us for it. And we thank everybody for the like and the supports and the subscriptions and stuff. But we're back here for another deep dive without Chris, but we're in heady territory again. Mike, what do we got in store? Something special,
okay.
I think.
So we like pioneers. I mean, you've heard us do Mark Coleman. You've heard us do Tara LaRosa, Shoni Carter, Bas Rutten. There's a woman from the Netherlands named Marloes Coenen that at one time was ranked #1 in the world. And she cut, although she was based out of the Netherlands, she cut her teeth in Japan. And I'm going to tell you guys something. I hope that you haven't heard of her, even though she's doing commentary for Invicta. I hope you don't know much about her MMA career, because it's incredibly fascinating in a male-dominated sport, and especially like the Netherlands, where, I mean, it was like Peaky Blinders on Netflix. That's what the MMA scene was in the Netherlands when she was cutting her teeth. And that's not me like exaggerating. It's not me stretching the truth. That's actually reality. And we're absolutely going to address that with her. Prior to that, though, Miguel, I got to say, there's a woman that's no longer with us named Marianne Giordani. And she was not only a big Marloes Coenen fan, she also served with our military. She was in the special forces with the United States Army. Her group had a poster of Marloes Coenen on their wall as a sign of inspiration. And I'm going to be honest with you, like all you, I, and Chris, anything with anybody that serves our country, we got a soft spot for. So all the little research and attention to details that we did was done so with the fact that we were thinking, although this woman is no longer with us, she'd be proud of what it is we're putting forward. So this is for her, man. Absolutely. Anyway, Marloes Coenen is an MMA pioneer that everybody needs to know about. And I think we're going to accomplish that in this. And we just kind of break through a little bit, but once the water starts coming through the dam, it's just going to flow. I'm sure of it.
Yeah, I'm pumped up for it. I know her. She competed in the Abu Dhabis. And the other thing for the historians out there, keep in mind, and we got a little taste of this with Art Davie, but you got to keep in mind, the early days of MMA, Holland was a bastion because you didn't have Britain and you didn't have Scandinavia and those countries. The UFC, the early UFCs went to Holland to get fighters. And again, very male driven. For a woman to succeed from back in those days is simply going to be an amazing story in my book, whatever it is.
Well, let's also think there was a mafia war to control mixed martial arts in the Netherlands at this time as well. Like when she was doing her thing, people were getting killed behind gyms. Cars were getting blown up. Guys were getting the cars blown up, living, and then killing the people that they thought did it. And these are all the people should be walking into these gyms. And, this isn't like a street corner on the south side of Chicago. Like you're ducking and hiding, walking in and out of a gym because you don't know what kind of nefarious activity the person that owns the place had done. And, although, I think she just kind of, brushed past those people, we're going to get some stories out of her in regards to that. That I'm sure of. On top of going through her incredible career.
And here we go, Marloes Coenen. Hey, Miguel and ADCC back here on the Lights Out Podcast. Chris Lytle is on the road, but I'm joined by the MMA detective, Mike Davis. And we're off on another deep dive interview. We have a classic. One of the pioneers of women's MMA has joined us, Marloes Coenen, all the way from Amsterdam in Holland. And Mike, definitely, this is going to be a lot of fun. Marloes, how are you?
I'm good. Thank you. My 3-year-old is just in bed, so I'm good to go.
Thank you.
Good.
Thank you.
So Marloes, one of the fascinating things about going through your career is your grit, understanding of the sport, ability to stay calm is like, it's something that should be studied. Where does that come from?
Well, to be honest, I was shitting my pants all the time, so I don't know.
So just so the people at home can understand just what kind of bravery that Marloes showed in her fights, there's an Army Special Forces unit called the Myrmidons. It's like a Greek name. They have your poster hanging up in order to, as an example of showing courage and bravery.
Really?
Yes.
Nah. Oh, wow.
Yes.
Wow.
And in this interview, we are going to show exactly how these Army Special Forces people came to putting her poster up on a wall.
Please
So
tell me the name after this interview. I'm going to Google them.
yes.
This is mind-blowing.
So we do a little social media in regards to who's coming up next. And a person from that unit contacted us, let us know, big fan of hers. In fact, such a big fan, this is what we did.
It's funny because when here in the Netherlands, they don't understand MMA for a bit. So when I have to talk to the mainstream media, they always give me the same questions, and then and they always try to make me like I'm this amazing woman and blah, blah, blah. And because I was in the cage, and I'm trying to explain that what I did, I was an athlete. You know what can happen if you step into the cage? If you tap out, it's over. I know it feels like you're going to war, but you're not going to war. And then I'm always talking about my late grandmother and grandfather. They were on about Yad Vashem for what they did in World War II. And also military people or like police people. I mean, there are people that really put their lives on the line to serve for a greater good. So it's funny that they do that, because in my opinion, that are the true heroes of our society.
Not only do I agree with you, but when our heroes put somebody's picture on the wall,
I'm like, what?
yeah,
yeah,
it means a lot to us as well.
Yeah.
So let's start with your first fight. Like, you've got a very interesting career based on the fact you're from the Netherlands. Obviously, we've established that, and the majority of your career is actually taking place in Japan. The first fight that I have on record listed is the Ladies Legends Pro Wrestling in Tokyo against Yuki Kondo. Was that your first fight, or did you have anything prior to that?
Well, it was my first fight in Japan, but prior to that, I had 2 amateur fights in Shuto, which was a Japanese organization, but they organized in the Netherlands. Okay,
were those amateur fights or professional?
No, amateur.
Okay, would you mind? I couldn't find anything on that. Like I
don't think it's not recorded at all. The second for sure not. The first maybe, but I haven't never seen it back.
Would you mind taking us through both of those fights so we can, make a historical notation in regards to what took place?
It was actually in a dojo next to my high school. And I remember because I had to go, I had to go to school on a bike every day. That's why I started out with, I wanted to learn how to defend myself. Prior to that, I was only doing tennis and volleyball. And from self-defense, it went to cage fighting, MMA. And I remember that I was on the bike to the fight, and I could hardly get the pedals. I couldn't.
Yes.
Yeah, it was a long day, I can tell you. My 3-year-old was quite demanding. And I was like, oh, my legs are so heavy. This is weird, because I was doing it every day, and normally there wasn't a problem, but it was all fear in my legs, of course. To cut a long story short, she came all the way from Rotterdam. So my head was like, oh my God, it's a big city. And I was a small town girl. And she also had, I remember she had shorts on, black with yellow stars. Wow, that made an impression on me, because I was standing there probably, I don't know, in my Nike legging or whatever. And I remember that we had to touch glove, and I went back into my corner, and I thought to myself, okay, now she's going to beat me up. And then within a minute, I had broken her nose and her arm. And Jan Loomulder, he's a pioneer, also fought in in Japan. He was a kickboxer, but he also fought in, it's a Brazilian name from a Japanese organization.
Rings?
No. Anyway, Valetudo Japan. That's what he did.
Okay.
And he was there in Japan, and they asked him for a replacement fighter because somebody, and that was for the Yuki Kondo fight. And he said, well, I know this girl, and he had seen me fight. And then my second amateur fight took also place in the Netherlands. I don't know much about it anymore. I think I won on an armbar or something. And then I had just started a university in Rotterdam. And then I got called. But there was no, the internet wasn't that developed. You had the Nokia, I don't know if you had it in America as well, the 3310. You play Snake on it, that one. And I went on a Friday back to my parents in the east of the Netherlands, and my mom was waiting for me in the garden, and she said, Loesje, it means small Marloes. You can fight in Japan, but we do not know if you can make it because the travel agencies will close at 5 o'clock because it was a weekend and you couldn't go online and get a ticket. So I went to the inside and I was waiting for the phone to ring. And then I took up, and then it was my girlfriend of my trainer. And she's the only thing she said, Marloes, do you want to fight in Japan? Yes or no? And I said, yes. And I hung up. And she said, because we need to know, otherwise they cannot book the ticket. So I didn't know anything. I didn't know who was fighting, what the rules were. Money, didn't think about that, nothing. And then I arrived at the airport, at Schiphol Airport, and Gerrit Cadeau was there, Bob Schriber, and his wife.
Dirty Bob.
Yeah, Irma. And they were like heroes to me, but I also was a bit scared of them because I was a very, I was 19 years old and I came from this very middle-class family. My father was a teacher, that was my background. And then in the Netherlands, we swear we don't say, fuck your mother or whatever. We swear with diseases. So I will not repeat it, but there's a word that if you use that disease, it means that's not good. And Gerrit, I remember, said it like in every sentence. And I was like, okay. And he said also other stuff. And Bob and Irma, they were consuming one bottle of port in the plane. So, that was like who I was dealing with. But Gerrit, on the way.
Did you connect this fight? Did Bob Schriber help you get this fight?
No. That was Jan Loomulder. But Irma had to fight as well.
Okay.
On the card. And Gerrit Cadeau had a few girls fighting from his dojo.
Okay.
So that was the crew I was traveling with. And my trainer was already in Japan. So I was by myself. So it was like, I was between all those people like, oh, what is this? And but Gerrit was actually very sweet. He toured us all the way through Tokyo, and he has this, big mouth but a small heart, as we say in the Netherlands. So he was taking care of us like, it's Dutch, I don't know, like a father. It was really sweet. And then I remember that when you're in Japan and you're fighting there, everything's very strict. So I was I had to do the walkout, but it was choreographed. No,
yes.
Sorry, yeah. And so I had to get on the catwalk, and then I had to walk apart, and then I had to stand still, and I had to look a certain way, and then I could walk further to the ring. And I remember that I walked there and I stood still, and it was all black around me. And I felt the light on my face, and I thought by myself, okay, well then, fuck it. Then you will break every bone in your body, but you came all this way. Now you have to do this. And and the thing was, I punched her in the face, and she dropped down. And then I started swearing, and I never swear. So when I was that age. So, and my trainer later on.
How things have changed.
It was Gerrit, also that, but it was also Gerrit Cadeau. So I was swearing his words, and he was, you fucking hoe, blah, 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 blah. Well, she was on the floor. Yeah, that was my first.
So let's kind of frame this. So Yuki Kondo, Yuuki Kondo, named after the Japanese legend, mixed martial artist. She's from Pure Breed Kyoto, which is a legendary gym in Japan. When you arrived, and you saw who you were fighting, or you were informed of it?
No.
Did you? Oh, so you found out when you were going to the ring?
I didn't know who she was. I had no idea. I didn't know who Anthony Newey was either. No idea.
Oh, so
I remember that when we made contact, I was like, oh, she's really strong. Later on, I found out she had been on Olympic level judo.
yes. Yes.
I didn't know. Yeah, I was crazy back then.
Well, for instance, afterward, when you found that out, would it have been better to know that before the fight, or were you happy to find out afterward?
I was shitting my pants. It didn't matter. It didn't matter.
Either way.
Yeah.
But let me ask
now,
you, if I could ask a couple of questions. So you get to Japan, and obviously you're very young, and Bob Schriber's there. You realize there's a whole fight, but you did do Shudo back in Holland, and arm bars and stuff. Who was teaching you like technique and stuff? Is that Martijn de Jong?
Yeah. I learned in that time, I learned everything from him. I wasn't training with Lucien Carbin yet.
Okay. Talk a little bit about Martin, because I think he's also the person that would have been Shudo Holland behind, the man behind Shudo Holland. So talk a little bit about him and his position there and how he helped you.
Well, I wanted to do kickboxing, but my mom didn't let me because it was too far away. Well, actually, it was the dojo where I had my first Shudo fight. But she just didn't want to let me do kickboxing. So then my brother brought me to a karate class, but it was only karas. I was like, if somebody pulls me off the bike, this will not work. And after that class, I saw two guys putting down mats, and they were wearing gis. And I was like, oh, what's going on there? And they were rolling over each other. And I remember that I felt so awkward to me. I was like, oh, what are they doing? Two men on top of each other? Wow, the connection was nothing. I wasn't used to that, but I did know, like, okay, if someone pulls me off the bike when I'm going to school, this is what I need to learn. So that's how I started training with Martijn, and he was doing also MMA. So when he was fighting in the Netherlands, the whole crew went. So that's how I saw how it was, the scene, what MMA was. I even saw Irma fighting, I think, once. And he, to me, was a big brother. And now, we were fighting I was fighting in ADCC as well. And then he went, and etc. So most of my fights, he was in my corner.
Okay.
So, okay. We usually kind of wait till we start dipping our toes into deep waters. But, we're conversating now.
And you mentioned Bob Schriber.
Yes, you mentioned Bob Schriber, and right there, you've completely derailed me. I'm a huge Bob Schriber fan.
He's such a sweet guy. Really, he really is. And his
okay.
Wife,
well, here, you preface, he's such a sweet guy, and for the people that are listening that might not know him, there isn't a human being alive that has had more point deductions in fights than Dirty Bob Schriber, ever. You might be able to add all of Gilbert Yvel and several other people's point deductions together, and they will not add what Bob Schriber has accomplished in regards to point deductions. Can we agree on that?
Probably, yeah. But the thing is, he comes from a very, very hardcore background. And I did a podcast here in the Netherlands, and we interviewed him as well. And then it was the first time for me that he spoke about it. And his upbringing was not good at all. Like, think of something bad, and then, amp it up 100%. Really, he comes from a really bad background. So to see where he comes from, what he has built up, and the person he is today, props, really.
Yeah, he's an interesting character. We had Bas Rutten on, and Bas Rutten said he's a good fighter, but that Bob Schriber was the best street fighter that he could ever imagine.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. 100%. And if Bas Rutten says something like that, then it's true.
Yeah, it is a very interesting situation because we only saw him like in the big shows, but when he was a presence in Holland, I imagine that everybody respected him,
Yeah, for sure.
And you mentioned Irma, his wife, and Mike will be back here in a minute. His wife also fought on some of these shows, early shows with you.
Remember Erin Toughill?
Yes.
Well, she fought Erin Toughill in Aruba. It's in the middle of in the Caribbean.
Yeah. I know.
Very bloody fight.
Did Irma and you ever train together?
No, never. But she was in the west of the Netherlands, and I was in the east.
So just to kind of put in a proper context of who Bob Schriber is, almost everybody that he grew up with in a mixed martial arts scene is dead. They've died something tragic, horrific, or they're in prison for a long time. He also would no-show fights that he was in, not because he was being irresponsible, but because on the way to the venue, he got into a street fight.
I believe it.
So, I mean, that kind of tells you, like, Bob Schriber, he's also like when the marijuana bars started becoming popular in Holland,
Canna.
he was the marijuana, the drug bars.
Canna. That was on his shirt always.
The Bulldog, yes.
No, Canna. That was the Bulldog guy, everybody that knows that, but he always had Canna on his chest.
Yeah. He was the original bouncer, kind of fending off the local authorities. So it kind of told you that he was somebody that people feared, not just on the street, but also, politically speaking. So no, I've got a world of respect for Bob. And I think if a life story needs to be put on Netflix, he absolutely qualifies.
You know that he actually is a really good actor in the Netherlands. He's often asked as an actor.
Oh, that's awesome.
Most of the time he's a bad guy, but he's good at it as well.
We've tried to get him on here and he can't figure Zoom out. So it's we've done all the research. We're ready to go, and he doesn't know how to do Zoom. So it is what it is. So Yuki Kondo, that's November 22nd, 2000. And you made such an impression in Japan with how you handled yourself, probably pretty low maintenance, that they put you in an 8-man or 8-woman tournament, December 5th, 2000, the Remix World Cup, and it was also with Shudo rules. It's a very interesting tournament on the surface level, and you kind of showed some heroics in that tournament. Why don't you talk to us how you agreed to get into it, and then we're going to go match by match.
Well, actually, I declined in the first place because I came back from Japan, and that first time, and that experience was so overwhelming that when I came home, I was sick. And then I got the call like, hey, do you want to be a replacement fighter again for this tournament? And when I was the first time in Japan, they were talking about it, and Irma wanted to fight in it. And so I knew it was a big thing that was being organized, but it never crossed my mind that they would ask me. And so I said no. And then my trainer, he talked to me and he persuaded me, and I said, okay, let's give it a try. But I was even crying on the day before I left. I was so tired. I was like, I'm so tired and sick. And that's how I got on the plane. And I had no idea what I had signed up to. No idea. I mean, I saw Gunarenko the 2 or 1 day before that. And I saw Becky. And Becky Levi was the only fighter I didn't saw. And I saw all these big women. And it was like mind-blowing.
Okay, so in essence, Becky Levi is a bigger woman, as we have described. And she's also regarded as the #1 ranked woman in the world. And I think it's just by sheer size and just ferocity. She's Dan Severn's trainer, Don Fry's trainer, Scott Ferozzo used her as a trainer. So we're looking at alpha males here in the United States going, and these are rough guys too. I know in this world of political correctness, at that time, I don't think that they had caught up to that, and they respected her. So that's like how feared Becky Levi was. And on the other side of the ring, and the other side of the tournament, in true Japanese fashion, like Japan loves like a circus and a freak show, and you already know what's coming. They have a Russian woman that's 6'3" and 330 pounds named Svetlana, I don't know, Gondarenko, and she actually's got a win over Erin Toughill in the first round. So
and they said she was also Russian champion of vodka slamming.
Oh, I listen, a woman that's 6'3", 330 pounds, I don't doubt any of that. So your first round opponent, and like you said, you're very scared up until this point, is Mika Harigai from a famous gym, Fight Chicks, and it's your first round opponent. Why don't you walk us through that?
Actually, I don't know much about it anymore. It was more like everybody was talking about this one woman that would probably win the tournament. That was Becky Levi. And I was shitting my pants so hard that what I'm telling you now is from what the footage that I have seen afterwards is that I think I knocked her down, and then I was like, oh, she's already on the ground. Well, let's do a rear naked choke. And that was it. And the thing is, if you're fighting tournaments, when the first fight is over, all the stress is gone. But then I had to fight Becky. So I was in the catacomben, backstage of a venue. I don't know how you call that.
Yeah, the locker room.
No, but what the locker rooms are, that corridor, I don't know.
Okay. The warm-up or the back area, yeah.
Whatever. And I was walking towards the catwalk, and then I felt something. Someone was staring at me, and it was above me. And that was the first time that I saw Becky Levi, and she was looking at me, and she was dressed in black. And the only thing that I remember was that I was so scared that I blocked it. She looked at me and I was like, hell no. And then I just forgot about everything.
It was like the mountain from Game of Thrones.
Yeah, beyond.
That's who you're fighting.
Like, it was so scared that I blocked it. I wasn't even scared anymore. It was gone out of my mind.
She also had Dan Severn in her corner, which obviously everybody knows who he is, especially at that time. And I mean, you're cornered by Golden Glory. Did you switch gyms at this point, or did you?
No.
Okay.
No. It was my trainer went to Golden Glory, and therefore, I was wearing that suit. I wasn't with the Golden Glory back then.
Okay. I thought I noticed people wearing Golden Glory shirts in your corner.
True.
So they probably helped out corner.
Yeah.
Okay. So Becky Levi, like you employed like a really interesting like strategy. You were backing up, and Becky Levi wasn't cutting off the ring. So you were just kind of timing her steps. And the one time that Becky connects, you see the look on Marloes' face going, I mean, it's like, holy shit, that was hard.
I was running for my life. You can also see me running.
So it wasn't strategy, it was survival. Is that what you're saying?
The only thing that was strategy was a flying armbar. But for the rest, like, it was like, because I know I hit her, and then her hair went like this. And the only thing she did was this. I was like, holy fuck. And then she hit me, and I went into the ropes, and I was like, okay, if she hits me once more, I'm like KO. And then from the power of that she threw me in the ropes, I used it when it bounced back to run. And then I don't know what happened. And then when we had the connection, I knew, because we had rehearsed it in the locker room, the flying armbar. And then my trainer told me, give her 2 knees. And then when I say go, you go. So when you listen to the video, you also hear him like, 1, go. And then I jump. And I was so tired, because after what I said, after the first fight, all the tension is gone. So then you feel like, oh, I'm actually, the adrenaline is gone. Like, oh, I'm quite tired. And I remember that I jumped in her, and then I landed on the floor. And the only thing I needed to do was like keep it tight and stretch my hips. But I was so tired. So I said to myself, okay, the only thing that you need to do, Marloes, is one more time, an explosion of power. And then you can go home to the hotel, you can go to bed. So that's what I did. And then I broke her arm.
Yes. Yeah, you I'm like watching it, and like I don't like to look at records. You know, I remember you were quite accomplished, obviously, and I'm watching this fight, and I'm like, oh man, this has got the potential to be really, really bad. And your jumping flying armbar was cutting edge. I mean, forget women's mixed martial arts. It was cutting edge across the board, whether it was in the women's or men's division. And
Now,
your trainers had an incredible amount of confidence in you and your abilities, much more than yourself at this time.
I was actually inspired by Rumina Sato. He did it in Shuto in Setsue, like I think in 8 seconds. And my trainer had the video, and we rewatched it for I think like 20 times back in the Netherlands. I was like, this is so cool. I want to learn this, and that's why I did it. I was young. I wasn't thinking things through. I was just like, oh, we're gonna do it. Yeah, okay, let's go. Not thinking about the consequences, what would happen if I would fail. There was no failing. Yeah, so a lot of intuition, a lot of fear, and a lot of luck.
Yeah. Bob, you know, when luck consistently shows up, you know, in somebody's fights, you know, kind of, it's really not so much luck as it is skill. And that's what we see with Megumi Yabushita. You know, it's a recurring opponent of yours. But at this time, she actually defeats the 6'3", 330-pound Russian by decision. So you're walking into a fight where you're the fresher of the two. What were your thoughts going into that? Like on your third fight, like you already have issues with one fight, and now you're on your third in the same day.
I thought, I'm gonna beat up that little Japanese woman.
Oh, so you actually turned the corner then, confidence-wise.
Like, what? She's little. I'm gonna beat her up. Well, you know what happened.
Well,
but I remember
you said that Yuki Kondo was a judoka. Yabushita would be a better judoka.
For sure. I think she won like silver on the Olympics.
Yeah, exactly. So that's what you see what the Japanese do to you. First, they test you first, and then they hit you with a legitimate, real badass.
I have so much respect for her. She's so like, I think that woman deserves so much more attention than that she has had.
Agreed.
She's like amazing. Yeah.
So Yabushita controlled you. I mean, she had a couple, you know, strong judo throws, and she took you down several times, but couldn't do anything with the position. And while you're on the bottom, you're really working hard. And at the time, mixed martial arts judging was horrible, no matter what country you were in. And it appeared that you may have not gotten the decision, but they raised your hand.
I thought I had lost.
Yes.
I thought so. I mean, winning on points in Japan, ain't gonna happen. I remember from that fight that I knocked her down, and she bent over to touch her face, and I was like, if I kick her now in the face, it's over. But I felt sorry for her. I was like, nah, I'm not gonna do that. Well, that was one of the biggest lessons that I've ever had, because after that I was going, she threw me all over the ring, and I learned a lot from that.
What I think helped was the rule set. Like I would agree with you. Like if it's a regular mixed martial arts rule set, I'd say you're hard pressed to think, you know, you would get your hand raised, but that one knockdown, the way Shudo scores, counts it as a 10-8 round.
Probably. I've never thought it through. I was like, I lost. Oh, I won. Then okay, let's go with the rest of my career. I've never looked back a lot in my career.
Oh, good.
But I think what you're saying makes sense.
What did that pay you, if you don't mind us asking?
I won the tournament.
Yes, with the tournament, what did it pay?
It was $100,000.
Holy cow!
Good for you. Good for you, because you know.
But a lot of things went off.
Oh yeah. And
for sure.
Everybody was getting the money.
Like
it's still also very, you know, the kind of thing is it's really not that much money. You know what I mean? But you know, we know this now as adults and everything, but for them, and also even then, the men didn't make that. So definitely my hat's off to the promoters and to yourself for winning that. That's cool. That's definitely cool. And I will also point out that at this point, worldwide, reputation-wise, this Dutch girl is
number one.
already broken a couple of arms. She's got a collection of arms. Look at this.
Yeah. And Becky Levi, like Marloes, I'm just gonna be very direct with you. And usually we should probably be a little more candid, but we've had guests that dealt with Becky Levi as a promoter with Dan Severn. There's some legendary stories in our library. And all of them had to deal with her intimidating men, like grown adults, Dan Bobish being one of them, where she was very aggressive and not afraid to fist fight with a man. And I think what you accomplished that day, I shouldn't say I think, it was shocking. Like here in the United States going, all right, Becky's going to go there, clean up, get her money and come home. And when we heard about this, feminine, very athletic Dutch woman that handled her business over there, it was quite shocking, at least here stateside.
I think she underestimated me. I mean, it's the first rule of fighting: don't underestimate your opponent, and that's what she did. But you can see how she reacts on me punching her and grabbing her neck. She's still like, okay, well, okay, let's go along with it. Don't demolish her so quick. I have underestimated people as well in my career, and I also had to pay for it.
So at this time, are you fighting full time?
After that tournament, I started, I quit school. I dropped out of university and I was like, I'm going to be just like the guys, the K1 champs and all. And it didn't happen, but yeah.
That's interesting. Yep. Okay. So from there, May 3rd, 2001, you fight in Remix again in Japan against Yoko Takahashi from the Tomogumi gym.
The first time I was in Japan, I saw her and I was so happy that I didn't have to fight her, because again, I was like, oh, she's so scary, I don't want to fight her. And then I was the champ, and the first one that I had to fight was her. And so that was a big mental test. All of a sudden I was a champion, and I had to face again an opponent that I was like kind of scared of. And what I remember from that fight is that my trainer gave me, he said something to me, and he wanted me to do something, but I didn't understand him. And then I created something and created a different armbar than what he mentioned. That's what I know from that fight. And also that, I faced my fears and I conquered. And I fought her later on again.
Yeah. So you had some repeat opponents. Yeah. It seemed that the Japanese audience really enjoyed having you over to their country. Was there a language? Did you start like understanding Japan or Japanese a little bit better at this point?
Yeah, no, I have such a love for Japan. There are actually two countries like America and Japan that have really changed my life and that I have a deep love for. And the first one was Japan. I remember, and I didn't realize at the time being that when I felt coming home when I first touched down in Tokyo. Like there was something in that culture and that vibe of the Japanese that I really felt. And so yeah, I mean, I have friends over there. Actually, Chris Light has fought one of my friends, Taro Obata.
Okay.
Till this day, he's a good friend of mine. And now I have a big love for Japan, and I try to know some words, of course, but I haven't been to Japan since I think 2013. So it's a very long time. Yeah, I want to go back. I want to show my little one Japan.
That's cool. So you win by armbar in the first round, and you wait until January of the next year in order to get a rematch against Megumi Yabushita.
Yeah.
And JD, the event is called JD NHB. I don't know, Japan Dojo NHB, I think is what it was.
Whatever. I was like, you want me to fight? I'm coming. Yeah, it was in Corken Hall. And what I loved about it is that like everyone who has a career in Japan has fought in Corken Hall. So to me, that was a big one to fight there. And that fight was over pretty quick. I was nervous because of the first fight, and it took me 50 minutes, And then that second fight, I hit her, and then I did a rear naked choke, and then all the blood came out, and it was over. But again, it was a fight that derived me, I think, of my fear, like I'm not good enough.
Well, there was questions in regards to whether you won the first fight. So now they bring you back out again to kind of figure this out. And, you ended the fight with an exclamation point. You finished her. Like, there's no doubt about, that outcome at that point.
It was dominant.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. And you can see your confidence too.
Yeah. What?
Your confidence is growing as well.
Yeah, but I have always been very insecure during my career because I'm a perfectionist, so it was never good enough for me.
Well, let me ask you, when you said you enjoyed the reception in Japan, in Holland, and we joked around a little bit, but in Holland, like Gilbert Ivell, the Overeem brothers, Bob Schriber, like
Sammy Schilt.
Like the guys are rough dudes, It's
Peter Arts, yeah.
Like, but in Japan, you are really treated like an athlete. Was that part of the appeal to you, or did you find that you were getting respect in Holland as well?
No. In the Netherlands, kickboxing was king, and they didn't understand MMA too much. It's starting now. Actually, I think a year or 4, that things start to shift. That you see kickboxers transferring to MMA. Ilyas Boulaïd, he's fighting now in a Bellator, for instance. He has 170 kickboxing fights. Wow. So we see more Murto Groenhart. He was always with the gym of Mike Passanier, fought in Glory, was a Glory champ, and so on. So we see now more that transition. But first, I was a woman. And second, it was MMA. So people weren't that interested. I've never been a star in the Netherlands. No, never.
So you were huge in Japan. It's kind of like one of those indie bands. Yeah, we're big in Japan.
Yeah, true. Yeah.
That's wild.
Yeah, but it was okay with me because it was good. I don't want to walk over the street and everybody's like, "Hey, we're looking."
Yeah, you can live your life.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. So 3 months later, April 14, 2002, you fight Miwako Ishihara.
Oh, Ishihara, yeah.
From the Zendokai gym, which is also just you're literally knocking off like the one famous gym after another in regards to people that produce incredible women's talent in Japan.
He was a Kyokushinkai fighter from origin. Yeah, then at that point I had started training with Lucien Carbin to develop my stand-up fighting, and he said before I left to Japan, okay, your kicks are getting better but not good enough. So I remember in that fight that I wanted to give her a kick, and then I heard Lucien like, "Don't do that," and then I was out of my rhythm. I wasn't fighting on intuition anymore because I was an intuitive fighter, but I started to think that's what I know from that fight. For the rest, don't know anything about the fight anymore.
Okay.
So you take over a year off. You go from April of 2002 to December of 2004. What was the reason for that layoff?
I don't know exactly, but when I was 20 or 21, I got a disease. I think you call it not mononucleosis, but it attacks the liver. You're really tired. Young people have it all the time. Pfeiffer, we say in the Netherlands, but I don't know.
Okay.
No, it's not Lyme. My partner is sitting over there.
Is it Lyme disease? Yeah, no?
No. It's Pfeiffer, yeah. Well, anyway, you're very, really tired and it attacks the liver. And I was overtrained, I think, when I got that. And then I also got seizures.
Like wow.
Twitching and stuff like that. And I also started to scream when I was tired. And that started at the moment that I really had the disease. So the doctor was at home and I was like, doing this. And that was actually throughout my career, my biggest secret. I've had that throughout my entire career. So, and if I'm talking about seizures, I mean, like, every day that I woke up from that point on, I was tired. I didn't feel good. I was nauseous. I always say it felt like gray. I know things cannot feel gray, but that's how it felt to me. So when I stepped into the cage, if it was Strikeforce, Bellator, Invicta, whatever, or even back in Japan, then I already had it as well. I thought I had a disease. The first neurologist, was the first specialist that I saw. He said, well, maybe you've got Latourette, but I don't know. He did all these tests, he ran all these tests on me. But I have no idea. Well, goodbye. And he said that I maybe had a virus in me or a bacteria. So that guy, it was the first specialist I saw after our meeting with the GP. He gave me the idea that I was sick. So throughout my career, also when I was fighting ADCC and all, my biggest fear was that I would have a seizure on the mat or in the cage. And meanwhile, I was going to all these doctors because I needed a pill. I want to have a pill so I could feel good again and I could fight better than I was doing currently. So throughout my career, I actually have been handicapped, and it was late 2012 that I spoke with a neuropsychologist who was a former boxer. So all these other specialists had no idea who I was because I looked like a normal girl, and I said I was fighting, and they were like, fighting? Oh, what is this? And he understood what was going on. He said, you're overtrained. I said, overtrained? Can you be more than a decade overtrained? And he looked me in the eye and he said, yeah, well, apparently you can. And then, it hit me like, okay, so I'm not sick, I'm just overtrained. And then I had a few months later, I had a fight in Dream in Tokyo. So that's why, fighting in Strikeforce, I had to cut to 135. So imagine you're already overtrained for so many years. You're training only with guys. The training system of my trainer was not good for me. And I had to cut a lot of weight.
Yeah,
So,
now you mentioned the disease. I'm going to take a shot at it. The liver disease, was it hepatitis?
No. It's let me Google it if I can.
Okay, no problem. I didn't mean to derail that, but I thought I had it. So
Yeah, I was kind of thinking the same thing,
but that's interesting because it is a handicap. So in other words, there were no medical tests or blood tests or anything like that in Japan when you were doing that stuff.
No, glandular fever.
Okay.
Is that a word?
Yeah.
You know what it is? Glandular fever, it says.
yeah, I'm that's way out of my scope of anything. So I'm nodding my head.
Well,
Yes,
you're
but
tired all the time. That's
Yeah.
the thing.
All right, so you bounced back with a 4-person tournament, a 4-woman tournament, and there's some interesting.
Let me ask a little bit of politics about that, because you went from Shudo and the remix shows, and then you took the break also. Did those shows fade away? Did they call you during that time? Because now when you come back, and you're now in Smackgirl, so it's a different organization.
Yeah.
Talk a little bit about that.
No, actually, I didn't have a real management that would go out and get me fights. They just called my trainer and he said, okay, we just can fight. And that was it. So that was the reason I fought or didn't fight. And then also in Japan, the market was declining at that point also. But when I was doing that 4-women tournament, was it the tournament with Erin in it or with
Yes.
in it?
Yeah. So let me kind of set it up again. So December 19, 2004, you fight in a Smackgirl tournament. And these are all competing organizations, like what, to further what Miguel just said. In essence, like if you look at local Japanese fighters, they tend to always stay within certain organizations, and very rarely do you see them bounce around to where you're the opposite. You seem to be a free agent. And generally speaking, in Japan, it's frowned upon, but you seem to be the exception of the rule.
Well, maybe I was a gaijin, foreigner. So maybe that was okay with it. I was so young, I had no clue. And I just took the fights they offered me. And I hadn't signed anywhere. I mean, you just asked me, like, where the blood test? No, you didn't even step on the scale. You just fought.
Oh, wow. So you fight in a 4-woman tournament.
It would have been hard to weigh, Becky.
I'm not going to comment on that. You fight in a 4-woman tournament, and your first bout is obviously a rematch with Yoko Takahashi.
Yeah, the only reason I went to Japan was I was sick at that point, like really, really sick. Overtrained me now, no. Well, it was still the 5, I think, also working. But I was like, yeah, I'm the champion. I at least have to defend my title. So after the first fight, after beating Yoko Takahashi, like I said, in the first tournament, the adrenaline dump comes. No, it's not a drum, but the adrenaline is gone. And you're like, okay, everything is okay. I don't care what we're going to do. Have a beer or fight. It's okay. I'm relaxed. And before I entered the cage to fight Erin, I said to my trainer, like, I'm kind of tired. But if I look back on it, I shouldn't even have flown to Japan. It was like not healthy for me to do. So when I was fighting Erin, I didn't like her a bit at all.
There seems to be an issue between you two. When did this start? And I'll expand later, but where does this start?
Well, I think she was jealous that I won the tournament, because there was another girl, a Dutch girl, who was sitting also on the catwalk when they raised my hand, and then Erin was commenting on it. So I think it came from her, like that I shouldn't have won the tournament. So, and then she was very standoffish, and yeah. But okay, I wasn't, later on in my career, I wasn't nice to other girls either. So at this point in time, I'm like, I don't give a shit.
Well, if you look at some of the backstage footage, I was able to find some online. You hear Erin say, "That's payback. That's payback," as if there was some sort of exchange that happened between you two where she felt slighted.
Yeah, I know. I scratched her face, but I didn't do that on purpose. I did. Now you say it, I remember that during the rest, she said, "That bitch with my nails, I scratched her face." But what I remember from that fight is that I knew she would knock me out, and I didn't care about being knocked out. But I was like, I will not give you that. You can knock me out. I will stop myself. So. Really dumb. She could have better knocked me out. You will never stop a fight, but at that point, that was my decision.
What I thought was unfair was Erin was wearing an earring at the time, and you punched her to the side of the head, causing blood. And rather than allowing you to continue, the referee stops to allow the doctor to look at it. So essentially, you're on your way. Yeah. You're working to get a knockout. She's got something in her ear that they allowed into the ring for competition. It creates an injury, and now we have to stop the fight in order for them to look at it, stopping your momentum.
Yeah. Well, I'm 40 years old now. I'm good with it, you're right. It's like, how crazy. Why did they on earth let her with earrings into the ring, and why did she want to wear earrings in the ring? Crazy. But yeah, you're right. But that's the thing. I never watch my fights back. So this, what you're telling me, is actually new information for me.
Maybe we can file some sort of grievance. We could get that reversed. Maybe we'll file some sort of grievance on the fight.
17 years later.
And you know what? I think I made a mistake when I kind of categorized what this was. It was actually an 8-woman tournament, and Erin Toughill lost to Yabushita in the finals. So somebody you bested twice, including finishing. Erin just couldn't climb that mountain in the finals.
Wow, Erin gave up fighting Coenenvs in the first tournament. She wasn't mentally that stable. Look at what Yabushita did against Coenenvs, and she just gave up, and she was twice the size and strength of a Yabushita.
Yeah, she's a front runner. It would seem like she does well in fights when she's ahead, and then not so much. But how did that loss affect you in terms of, this is your first?
It's your first loss.
Who's a mentor for you here to help you through this in Holland? Is it Martijn de Jong? Are you with new people? Are you doing this by yourself still?
Yeah, well, no, Martijn, when I lost, if I'm honest, he never kind of really cared. He never walked me through it or helped me. So I did it on myself, by myself, basically. But I didn't know any better. I just had one trainer and, follow his lead. And when I got so tired, I told myself, when I got the disease, I told myself, like, before that, I was trying to figure everything out. I want to learn everything. And then I lost the joy in fighting. And I started out fighting because I wanted to learn how to defend myself. But then I really enjoyed it. And then I told myself, okay, if gaining all this data and all this intel and information and trying to make sense of MMA doesn't make you happy because it's too much of you, then just follow the lead of your trainer so you find your happiness back. And that's basically what I have done from that point on throughout my career. Looking back on that, it wasn't the most smart decision, but it was a good decision for me at the time. because I think I have stopped. I could have developed myself way much more if I had turned my mind on, so to speak.
Mhm.
So, like, for instance, how, like, you're obviously a legend in Japan at this time in women's mixed martial arts. And there's no question in regards to their respect for your abilities. How was dealing with the press after your first loss?
It's okay, because the next time you talk to the press, they're always very polite in Japan. And I had, like, what I call my Japanese father, Manabu Takashima. He was always writing for Gongak Toguchi, and Manabu was always quite direct to me, but I like that because I'm Dutch. We're rude people.
Mhm.
And then it's also you're gone the next day, so you do not really know what they write about. You mean, like in the beginning when I entered my first fight, I had seen fighters how they greet, from the Kyokushinkai karate style. So, and I also had learned that how they bow. You have to bow as deep as possible because it's more polite. So I kind of mixed it up. And I bowed so weird that they even took pictures of it, put it in the Gongak Toguchi, and they called me the penguin. So
So in other words,
no idea.
you had disrespectful bows.
Yeah, basically, but I was trying so hard.
That was your trash talk. I will give you a half-hearted bow.
No idea.
That's funny.
I did everything wrong you could do wrong in a bow.
So March 11th, 2006, you have a really good bounce back fight. And, it's almost a year after. So you take another extended period off. And this fight, in my opinion, like as a trainer and somebody that has love for one of their students, when somebody takes a loss, you have to be very careful so you don't damage the confidence in their next fight. And they give you a really good bounce back fight in Shudo, March 11, 2006. And again, a rematch with Yoko Takahashi. So the pool of women fighters isn't very deep.
No.
But the ones that do fight are constantly gunning for you, it seems.
Yeah, I completely forgot about that fight. I didn't know I fought her 3 times. I don't know anything. I know where it was. Now you're telling me. Okay, let me tell you what I know from this fight. Yeah, such a
Shudo.
Yeah, and I know they drove me to it, and then we entered a garage, and I was like, "Where's the garage?" But it was with an elevator. That's basically what I know from that fight. For the rest, I don't know anything. Sorry.
It was quick. I mean, it was 39 seconds, and you won by armbar.
Oh, in the first round?
Yes.
I really don't know anymore.
Well, your confidence at this point, like you started this interview with, "I'm scared, I'm crying, I'm nervous." I think those airplane rides are much different now.
Well, no. Throughout my career, also when I was fighting in Strikeforce, only when I was fighting at the 135 division, I was like, okay, this is fighting like in midget land. I don't care. But even for every fight, I was always nervous, always, and I have always doubted myself because I was a perfectionist, and the feedback that I got from a trainer wasn't the most build-up feedback that I received. Yeah, I'm very diplomatic right now, so let's keep it like that. But yeah, so it was me being the perfectionist and also the feedback, and that combined in a fighter that I had a really, really big drive. It was compromised by the disease, but still it was so huge that I could even get a title in Strikeforce being sick. And even mentally, I was also really strong, but I think that lack of confidence made me a good fighter.
Well, one of the crazy things is that other than your 2 amateur bouts that you had described earlier, you haven't fought at home yet, not as a professional. And your next fight is January 21st, 2007. So another extended period off. You fought Ultimate Glory in Amsterdam against, I'm going to butcher this name. It's Majanka Lathouwers, I want to say. I
think she's Turkish, right? Yeah. Oh,
she's from Exit BJJ.
Oh, no. This was in
Amsterdam.
Amersfoort. Yeah, I remember that one. Yeah, she didn't really want to fight. Yeah. Yeah, for that fight, so I had learned some things about how the people in America were doing their cutting, and I went into a sauna. I did everything wrong, also the recovery. So I went into the sauna, then then I had to drive for an hour while I was already on weight, get on the scale, and then I went shopping with my mom because it was sale. So you know how my recovery was. So the next day I was in the ring and I wasn't feeling too good, but I won that fight. I don't know anymore how, but so overtrained, cutting weight wrong, no recovery, and then fighting. So yeah, that's what I know. But I remember she didn't really want to fight. She basically wanted to take it to the floor and then, you know, do her BJJ thing.
So you win by armbar in the second round. At this point, were you a big ticket seller at home?
No, not at all.
Really?
I'm a woman and it was MMA. People in the Netherlands come for, you know, Rico Verhoeven. He is like a real big celebrity in the Netherlands. He's also the first fighter that is has reached this level. But he's a heavyweight, he's a male, and he's a kickboxer. That's what we like in the Netherlands. We don't like.
Were you on the poster? You had to have been on the poster.
Yeah. I think so. Yeah, I think so.
You had to have been. So I'm assuming you've got there's a lot of moving parts prior to stepping, you know, through the ring ropes, and you haven't fought at home. So now you're at home. Everyone keeps hearing about what a big deal you are in Japan. I have to assume your phone is blowing up. There's a lot more distractions at this time for you.
No, I think what you're doing is you're projecting the American culture on the Dutch culture. And we don't have the sports culture like you have in the States, which is wonderful. You know, I mean, I've been training for 3 months with Eric Aiken in Kansas at a high school for wrestling. If I see what you have in America and the mindset, I mean, we've got the hooligans here. You don't have hooligans in the States, you know. You've got families who are getting together, and how do you call it when they were in the parking lot and they open the truck, the back of the truck, and they're barbecuing, and it's a family affair. And people in America call others athletes, you know, and they say it with an amount of respect that we lack in the Netherlands. So in the Netherlands, let me paint a picture a bit for you. Fighting is obscene. It's for low-life people. It's for criminals. It's for inked people, you know, stuff like that. And then there's this girl that is, well, in Dutch, I'm more eloquent than in English, that doesn't look like a fighter, that actually can put two words together and so on. And she's doing MMA. What is MMA? MMA is like cage fighting, but she's a woman. That's not possible. Women cannot fight like that. They don't become aggressive. So I was way too weird for people, for the mainstream media to really help me, to acknowledge me for what I have truly done. So what we now see is that it's starting to change because of social media, of course. But now I'm way too old. So people have no idea what I have done in Japan. They only know what I have done in Invicta or in Bellator and even a little bit of Strikeforce. But for me, if I look back on it, I was so exhausted. It's impossible to put in words how hard my road throughout my career, how hard it has been. And when I was fighting in ADCC, I think it was the second time, and I was fighting the Australian fighter. I had a seizure on the mat. It started, I had to do it, I had 10 seconds. My trainer told me 10 seconds and I could get an armbar out. And then I started already doing this, and he picked me up and he took me out of sight so no one would see it. I mean, that was my career. But people will never understand how hardcore it has been. And they don't care, and that's okay. I've learned a lot from it, and I can now use everything that I've learned in the cage and in the dojo. I can help other people getting strong, and you know, but it's a whole story.
Well, from there story. You take the first, like you're talking.
Is it Penny Thomas, the Australian?
She had blonde, short hair, but yeah.
Yeah, I think it was Penny Thomas. Go ahead, Mike.
Fought her twice.
Yeah. So on May 27, 2007, you fought in K Grace, and it was the first time they ever addressed your illness. They said that there were rumors of you being sick, and you fought in an 8-woman tournament, so you're sick, and like the challenges that you're putting yourself into are, they're not slowing down. Like they're not too big, even though on a surface level, they obviously are. And your first fight was against Kiko Tammy.
Is this the Modaferri tournament?
Yes, it was it was the second person from the Tamagori gym that you had fought.
Yeah, I only know the last two fights with the Polish girl.
The Polish girl's next. That's Magdalena Jureka.
Yeah.
And well, here let's go. The Kiko fight, you won in the first round by rear naked choke. It was a quick one. You go up against a woman from Poland, Magdalena Jureka. You win in the second round by rear naked choke.
Okay.
And then in the finals, which was incredible, like for us, you lose to Roxanne Modaferri.
Yeah, well, actually, I'm still pissed about that one. She tapped, and then the referee told me to let go. And then all of a sudden, we had to stop, and it was time. And then we had to fight another round. I was also, between rounds, I was burping and puking a bit. And then a friend of mine told me that her referee was from the same gym as Roxanne was. That's what I heard later on. But she tapped. So to me, I didn't lose that fight. But I was so pissed about it that when I love Roxanne, by the way. I love her. That I was fighting in Strikeforce, that my trainer had really campaigned to have my debut fight against Roxanne, because I really wanted to settle score.
Where did she tap? I didn't see it on video.
I don't know anymore. I know she tapped. I don't even know. It was at the end of the first round, or
you won the first round for sure.
No, but it was on the ground, I remember, and she tapped. I don't know. I don't know if I had her in the armbar or in a choke. I had her in a lock at one of the first or at the second round. Again, I didn't watch it fight back ever. Mm-hmm. If you have it for me, please send it to me.
Yeah. So it's your second loss. And you take another year off. Like your illness is bothering you. Like it's affecting how you make money as well.
Yeah, but fights were also not given to me. So it wasn't only I fought always, but I always wanted to fight because my ego was so big and my drive was even bigger. But the fights were just not coming my way. And also a lot of girls didn't want to fight me, if I'm correct. That's something that pops up now as well.
So you go back to the Netherlands, Beast of the East, May 31st, 2008. So it's like a year later. And Aski Kubra from Snake Team, you get kind of a gift opponent with her.
I'm so sorry for you, because this must be such an annoying interview, but I don't know anything about that fight.
It was a girl. She never had a career win. You got an armbar. You were in and out. I think it was just kind of like a knock the ring rust off. And, it was a smart move. Like if you've got a year off, you got to get back in there. Like your trainers were being very smart with your career. And
this is back in Holland.
Yeah, it's back in Holland.
Beast of the East, but the only fight that I remember from Beast of the East was against Cindy Dandois.
No, you were in and out. Like this is
that's why probably.
You may have rode your bike there, armbarred her and left. I mean, it's.
Well, actually, it wasn't that far from my hometown.
And then you go to Switzerland from there, Thai box.
Yeah, Romy. Yeah.
Against Romy Royusen.
Yeah, she was a tough opponent. Yeah,
very tough.
It was her hometown crowd. Yeah, I remember that. Actually, we drove to Swiss together with Sia Bahadur Zara. He fought in the UFC as well, and he's now the main coach of Evolve Gym in Singapore from one championship. And I forgot my passport. So they stopped us at the border, and we just smiled, and somehow they let us through. But otherwise, we had to drive back all the way to the Netherlands. Yeah, somehow I forgot to. So we went in there. It was a nice venue, I remember, and Romy was more agile and more strong than I anticipated. And I think I won that one on an armbar eventually. It wasn't points, right?
Rear naked choke.
Rear naked choke, yeah.
Sometimes the most dangerous of opponents are the ones you know nothing about. And she comes into this fight at 1-0, and there's not a large pool of women fighting at this time. I mean, that's just a fact. And she holds top position for the majority of the fight, and you're working submissions, and you're almost catching her. And prior to landing the rear naked choke, you had a whole bunch of almost submissions, but Romy had some very good hips.
Yeah, I think she was a former judo fighter who went into BJJ. She was doing a lot of BJJ fights and then transferred to MMA.
And that's a recurring theme. Miguel, this is a recurring theme for her. Like, it seems as if the promoters are digging into that like judo like pool and just pulling out whoever they could, like the high judoka players. You're running into them, whether it was in Japan, obviously that's in Switzerland, but in Beast of the East, Cindy Dadonis, who was also on the Olympic ladder for judo and for Belgium, and later transitioned to mixed martial arts. You're actually her first fight, but in terms of international competition, she might have more international competition than that of yourself at this point.
Yeah, well, at that point, I've done so many dumb stuff in my career. So I had heard from a guy who said, and he was a physiotherapist, really renowned in the Netherlands. And he said, like, yeah, you have to do yoga. And, everywhere around the world, monks and such like that, they wake up at 4:00 and they do the sun greet. So a week prior to my fight, I remember I was always exhausted and always tired. And I thought I had a disease. And meanwhile, I was creating, fucking up my body. I woke up. Was it
some of it in your head?
What?
Do you think you were some of it like where you're dealing with a lot of like the sickness? Do you think maybe you were replicating it in your head to a certain degree?
Not at all. No. I was looking for a cure. So during training, I also went to all the specialists that I could find because I thought the only thing I need is a pill and then I will be better again. So I wasn't busy with being sick. I was busy with finding a cure. So that's a different mindset. But a week before I started to do at 4:00 in the morning, the sun greet, I think you call it like that. Mm-hmm. So that completely fucked up my whole rhythm. And so I was already like, I remember, that's what I remember, that Nicky Holtzken, the kickboxing fighter, I remember that he was looking at me, what's happening with Marloes? I was already doing this in the locker room. We didn't even hit the mitts because it was impossible. And that's what my trainer should have said, Marloes, I don't give a shit what's going on now, because I had a lot of pride. I would never back down, but you're going home now. And I will call someone that will bring you home. But instead, he just sent me to the ring and let me fight. And in that fight, I remember, I think I had her in the armbar.
It's awful.
It is. And he didn't call me afterwards. They're like, hey, how are you doing? How are you feeling now? Yeah. And we also had referees that were kickboxing referees. They didn't understand the ground game. So they let us up when I had her like in a lock or whatever. And she won that fight, but this is a story behind that fight. And then I wanted to fight her again. I even faced her once. I said, let's fight again. And she said like, no, my brother doesn't want that. Of course she didn't want to fight me again. I understand why. But that's the thing that stinks. And I'm trying, I'm like, I'm 40, I don't give a shit anymore. But when I talk about it, I'm like, wow. I'm still like it. I should think I'm 40.
Who was managing you at this time?
I think it was with Golden Glory. I don't know sure if I was already at that point, but I think I was already then with Golden Glory.
Is that Epi Echteld?
No. He has never been my manager. He wasn't with Golden Glory.
Okay.
I think the next fight you have is on a show called Tough Is Not Enough in Holland. That sounds like an Oppie show because he'd like to do it Showtime. Tough Is Not Enough. He used to come up with those flashy names. Is that him promoting?
Could be, I don't know. Weet jij dat Tough Is Not Enough, wie dat heeft gedaan?
Well, little side note, Epi Echteld, the manager, Simon Rutz testified in court that Epi hired a hitman to kill him. So it's just kind of so people can
I know that story. Yeah, I know that story.
Would you mind telling our listeners at home what that might
Tell us what you can tell.
I'm afraid that I'm telling this wrong, so I'll keep it short. But what I know is that at this point at a forum in the Netherlands, they had put, I think, that call on the, they had listened to the call that was recorded, and they wrote about it on the forum. That's what I know about it. I don't know it any closer than that. But yeah, I know that story.
So with Golden Glory, did you have a lot of interactions with Ron Nyquist?
Yeah, for sure.
So Ron Nyquist, like a car bomb almost killed him.
Yep.
What was it like dealing with Ron?
Well, the thing is, I remember that I was already champion in Japan, and someone had had given the girlfriend of my trainer free tickets. So we went to this event, and he was sitting cage side. And in the Netherlands, we had this, I think bar mitzvah, you have the idea. You have these tables, and then nearby the ring. And then, the motor gang guys are sitting there, the criminals are sitting there, and they get all this food, and people walking around with trays and champagne, and everybody's seeing, it's a big show around the ring. And he was the big man. And I remember that she went to him to thank him. And then the big man, he saw me, and I was like, I'm not going, I was shy. I'm not going to that VIP section. Then the big man of the entire venue went to me. He walked to me, and he had a chat with me, like very superficial. And that made an impact on me. I was like, okay, this guy doesn't have to do this, but he's so kind that he comes to me. And I was looking like a skater girl. Right? I wasn't dressed in a bodycon and high heels. I was just wearing sneakers and stuff like that. And then another time, I don't know exactly, I also met him, and he again did a very small thing that told me something about his personality. And then the day that he got he died almost of the car bomb. And now he ended up in jail because he killed
the brothers that allegedly tried to kill him.
Coked up. Now I know again. Yeah. And then my trainer told me that basically that he was in isolation, and he was very sad. And then I thought by myself, okay, let's do the right thing. Let's be kind to another person that has been kind to you. So I started to write him a letter just to be kind to him. And he writes me a letter back. And that's how we started to have contact. And every once in a while, he called me. We weren't big friends or anything like that. And when he called me, it was always about sports, 99% of the time. Sometimes he told me about it. He was meditating and stuff like that. And if I look back on my career, I have shake hands with so many criminals. Most of the time I probably had no idea they were criminals. Also in Japan, I went to a club in Japan. We were invited, and at the end I was 19. All these Japanese gangsters were standing in a line. One was even having a mitella. I didn't look at his finger, but there was bandage here, so I don't know if the finger was gone. And I was 19, blonde, and we had to shake hands and greet the Yakuza. So, and also in the Netherlands, that I asked people like, okay, what are you doing for a job? And then they said, I'm an accountant. And I later on was like, I don't know accountants that look like that, So I've seen so many criminals. But the thing is, if you put out a certain energy and a certain vibe, you can hang out with the worst people in the world. It will not affect you. So I've never heard anything about drugs or criminal activities or whatsoever, because people just saw me and you're like, okay, this is a real athlete. This is a very naive girl or a young woman. No, we're not going to touch this. So yeah, I had contact with Ron a lot.
Yeah, those type of people too are also very good to have on your side.
Yeah, but actually when I was fighting in Strikeforce and before I had to fight, it doesn't matter in which hotel I was, and he always had to call from jail. He gave the best pep talk ever. He gave me so much mental war power. He was really good at that.
I tell you, I've spoken to just a few Dutch people in regards to that scene, and it's like something out of a Netflix movie. It's almost
Sure. Yeah.
It's almost unbelievable. I mean, some fighters were killed in their cars behind the gym. Sometimes they were firebombed. Whatever the moving parts were behind the scenes of the early Dutch days, I think it's almost a blessing that the majority of your career, when all of that was going on, was in Japan.
For sure. I've trained with a guy. This is also such a crazy story. His name was Jason Jones, and he was a former judo. Somebody already starts laughing now. He was a former judo fighter, and he was really good. He actually one of a Dutch judo fighter who later was an Olympic champion. So that was his level of judo. And I wasn't training with him like sparring because it was too big with me. But I can remember that for a fight, I think for the Misha Tate fight, he even helped me, I should defend and stuff like that. In the Netherlands, we have a system it's called TBS. And it means like, if you get that, you will never get out of jail anymore. And you have to go to all these psychologists and whatever. And if you're in that, it's over. Nobody wants to have TBS in the Netherlands. Well, he has that, and the reason is because he has killed his girlfriend. That he was her pimp, and what he did, he climbed on a flat from the balconies from the one to the other, and then he stabbed her and set her house on fire. That's a guy that I've trained with, and he was nice to me. Oh, yeah. Crazy stuff. I mean, like things are, coming up. It's so much of in my career.
Keep them coming. Keep them coming.
Yeah,
Marlon.
I
mean, so many crazy stories. It's like, yeah. But what I've also learned is that we really think of people in really terms of black and white and white. And what I've learned is that people are people. We've got all 2 arms and 2 legs, or at least most of us. And what kind of gender, race, ideology, religion, whatever, or even if you've done really bad stuff, there's always another side, and we shouldn't judge people too hard and too often, I think. But that's my opinion.
Well, no, Marloes, I think the one thing that the 3 of us can agree on, whenever you're going to fight for a large organization, whether it's in a foreign country, generally speaking, it's probably backed by money that you don't want to know where it came from.
Yeah, but also the other end, there's like here in the Netherlands, people saying you have La Cana and the grow shops and the Casa Rosso, it's the sex business. And people are really negative on them. Like, no, we want to have, AAA brands that are sponsoring us. But those people, the entrepreneurs of the Cana and such like that, they've been backing the sports ever since. They were the only ones. When nobody wanted to have anything to do with kickboxing or MMA, that were the people who were there. And I think you should also be grateful for that.
They bought tickets, they bought tables, they threw $500 at a sponsorship. Yeah, they did. They backed fighters as well. I mean, if you look at...
They never did me, but... because I was a girl and doing MMA.
Hank de Vries from the Bulldog Hash Shop in Amsterdam. He was a major contributor to the local mixed martial arts scene in Amsterdam.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I know.
I mean, you say what you want about the guy. He allowed the sport to grow and thrive.
Exactly, that's my point. Yeah, truly.
So you get the call. So November 7th, 2009.
I was just going to joke that the proper end to the Netflix film is Bob Schriber ends as Dutch president.
I would vote for Bob.
Vote for Bob, everybody, please.
So let me just kind of set the table here, Miguel. November 7th, 2009, Strikeforce. You get a rematch, like you had mentioned earlier, against Roxanne Modaferri. Right out of the gate, Strikeforce obviously is building people. Usually a fight like that, you kind of want to go, put down the line. How difficult was it for you to get that fight right off the bat?
No, I was so fired up, and I so wanted to make my point. And I knew also how big it was to do it right, because before that I had also signed with the LytesOut, and I was supposed to fight Gina Carano, but then they went bankrupt. And I think also Affliction, maybe that they were also talked with that, and then Josh Burnett kind of folded over the whole thing. So it was, I think, my third attempt to finally make a debut in the States because the Japanese market went down, and America was
the Yakuza got exposed.
Probably.
Yeah.
And so I knew it was a big thing, but I also was still pissed about that fight in Japan. I was like, I'm gonna get you. So that was my fuel, and like I said, I was a really intuitive fighter, so I didn't think things much through, but I was in such a state. I was so focused that my instincts and all, they were really sharp. And in the fight, I knew everything, but when the fight was over, I didn't know anything about the fight anymore. So that's why it's so hard for me to talk about the fights that you're talking about, because that's how basically every fight went. Then I had to watch it back to see what had happened.
So you won by armbar 1 minute 5 seconds into the first round. And at this point, Roxanne Modaferri, I mean, she's probably like the top woman in the country in regards to, name value.
Yeah, but to me, I already knew that I was way, way better than her, because I fought her when I was really, really tired, and then this time I was also tired, but it was a little bit better. So to me, before going into that fight, I was nervous. I was always nervous, but there was a knowing deep inside, like, yeah, I'm going to handle this.
Well, the thing about that fight is you have two very experienced women. You had Roxanne Modaferri at 13-4, and your record at the time is 16-3. Like you could argue that this was a world title fight without a belt being on the line.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean,
but who would you have said would have been a world title fight then?
But it was at 145, huh? And they had Gina right then, and I think she just got crushed by Cyborg, or was before that? I know it was.
Yeah, but Cyborg at that time, Cyborg, she wasn't established yet.
No, and she didn't.
She didn't get established until after your fight, in my opinion.
Ah, yeah, nah. The way she beat up Gina, come on. I still have that picture. If you say the picture in mind, and I see Gina like this, and I see the hand of Cyborg, and then Cyborg behind her like this. No, that was the end of her career.
Yeah.
So they put a lot behind Gina to have it come crashing down that way. So, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Well, here let's properly frame this so people at home can kind of understand. So you win with Roxanne Modaferri, and you take. You fight January 30th, 2010, you're in Miami, and they put you up against, Christine Cyborg, who's 8-1. And man, I tell you, Cyborg up until this time, other than her first fight, which was a loss, if you watch her bouts, it's almost like a bulldozer against a whole bunch of small little Toyota cars.
Yeah.
And the bulldozer's just running over just everybody. And it's not even close in regards to competition until she meets you.
In the first round, she won.
No. She never hit anybody more than twice. That continued on.
Yeah. That the way she hit me, I've told this story so many times. It was like somebody threw rocks at me, for real. That's how it felt. And after the fight, I told myself, like even yesterday, like this, I miss a part of this knuckle, and that's from the Cyborg fight. I heard her, and the only thing she did was this. And I was like, oh shit. And after that fight, I said to myself, like, if I'm fighting her next, then Rumor, my partner, has to hit me with all the strength that he has, all his power. I don't know if it's hard enough. It was so extremely hard. I've never been hit that hard in my life. Even the second time that I fought her, she wasn't hitting as hard as she was in the first time. That was crazy, really.
Well, she's 8-1 with 6 KOs. I think the bouts that went to decision, they were really early in her career. They don't really count. They kind of played with the time. I watched them just to kind of understand it. A lot of them were pancrase rules as well. You're 17-2, 3 knockouts, 12 submissions. You're also an Abu Dhabi champion. This is kind of, I know you guys say Gina Carano, but in my opinion, like Gina Carano was, a lot of media and stuff like that. She's obviously a beautiful woman. I think that really helped in regards to her marketing. But in regards to tried opponents that have, been through the ringer. I think this is, her first fight. Would you agree with that, Miguel?
No, I think Marloes is completely underrated at this point. At 17-2, everything that we've talked about, legitimate stuff coming up, and her mindset of coming to America to come to a big show, she's the number one girl in the world.
Absolutely. Thank you.
There you go, Marloes.
We're not going to argue with you about this. You were number one.
I do want to ask one question too, because now you come to America and there's some Dutch people on that show with Strikeforce with you. There's like Gegard Mousasi's there.
Love him.
And then Fedor probably had a lot of Russian ties. He was on that show as well. Did you interact with them? Was that your locker room? Were you in the locker room with Fedor?
No. We all had our own locker room.
Oh, okay. Fedor has his own locker room. Okay.
So everyone, when you're on the main card, you have your own locker room.
Nice.
So hold on. Let's go back to the original question. Bring us through the Cyborg, how you guys got that, how that fight landed.
I remember that I was in the train. I don't know. I was going to a doctor somewhere, wherever. And then my trainer called me if I wanted to fight this Brazilian girl. But I was the stand-in for the fight with Gina and Cyborg, because they both didn't make weight often. So they flew me in to cut weight. So if one of them couldn't make the weight, I would fight. So I was sitting in the venue when she was crushing Gina. So I saw firsthand what she could do. And then later on, I got a call when I was in the train on my way to a doctor. And my ego and my pride just said, yes, let's go. And that's how it happened. And but what I took from that fight, someone later on, a strength and cardio trainer, had watched the fight. He said, you got outpowered. And that's basically what happened. I don't think she was more technical than I was at the time.
No.
But she was so strong.
Well, you threw sharp elbows breaking from the clinch. You conserved your energy. And I think, unlike most people up until this time, mentally you were not afraid of her going into the fight.
No, not at all. I didn't realize how strong she was.
Oh.
I was like, fuck you. Yeah. Until she hit me, then I was like, oh my God, this is really, this is a little bit too hard. But then I would never give up. So I had, that was just my mindset. But she hit so hard, believe me.
Yeah. So you were intimidated at all going?
No.
You weren't intimidated at all going into this fight then?
No, but I was nervous because I was always nervous. I was always doubting myself. I was always afraid that I would have a seizure and stuff. I was more busy with myself and that I wouldn't be good enough than being knocked out or whatever. So even if I was fighting a mosquito, I would have still been nervous. It doesn't matter. It didn't matter.
Now, let me jump in. I want to ask you, as you said, you've had a tough road with your career and, not getting a lot of attention and things. I think Cyborg is a girl who also had at points a tough road in her career.
For sure.
But at this point, you got to be thinking, is she on steroids? Like, what are your thoughts on that and competing with somebody who might have been on steroids and all that?
Well, I thought she was on steroids before I went into that fight, but I thought, steroids, nah, won't hurt me. Well, it did. Yeah, so when she was caught later on, I wasn't surprised. I mean, I had seen her pictures, I had seen her fight, so I had my suspicions.
And then there wasn't. Go ahead.
I love Cyborg. She's one of the sweetest people I've met.
I respect her. Yeah.
And she's genuinely sweet.
And Americans tend to think, steroids, cheaters, but I think other cultures have a different way of thinking. That didn't affect you, you didn't think she was a cheater? It didn't make you want to do it? No, what is your mindset on steroids?
No, I didn't want to do it because I think you will burn the candle on both sides. In the end, if you're look at Arnold Schwarzenegger, and it will hurt your body in the end. But if you lose, this is the first time that I've spoken about Roxanne Modaferri and about. Normally, I don't speak about it because I think that if you lose, you need to suck it up. don't complain. So that's why I never speak out about, about cyborg and stuff like that, because then it will only make you like a sore loser. But you guys, you've done really dived into my career. So that's what I'm telling now. But it's actually the first time that I'm doing this.
Thank you.
Yeah, no, it's because you are you really have gone through it, and other people are just want to have a quick quote, and I'm not going to do that because it will make
Marloes, we started this with the intent of documenting history, and when you listen to people do interviews, it's not an interview, it's a conversation. It's they say a name and they give you the microphone, now entertain me, but there's no substance behind it. Like, if you're going to interview somebody, people will brag, hey, I did an interview with no notes. Well, how are we supposed to respect that? Like, I don't respect that. Marloes, do you know what I mean? Like, if you don't have notes, you're not prepared. You can't do it's not an interview, it's a conversation. You hung out with somebody and it's not real. Mm-hmm. So, our goal is to kind of document history, make sure it's at least there for your children, your grandchildren. Hopefully it never goes away. And if just one person, enjoys it, then we did our job. That's it. That's our job.
You guys. No, but I feel that you're really, you're truly passionate about it. And
of course.
From the things and ask me, I know that you have really put the work into it. So that it makes me opens me up as well. Yeah. But normally, I think I will look really bad if I'm going to say things about people that have beaten me in competition.
But there's also a side of the story that needs to be told. And your hand isn't going to be raised every single time. It is what it is.
Yeah, true. Yeah. I had to learn that as well, because I was winning so easily that you get a certain mindset. So the losses that I've had in my careers were very liberating. And they diminished my ego a bit, And I think as a fighter, you need to have a big ego to from all the attacks of the outside world. But when you quit fighting, that ego needs to dissolve and needs to leave. And that's how you also have to look at your career back,
So you also dealt with Miguel with Abu Dhabi.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm sorry. What did you say?
With ADCC, you and Miguel kind of began your relationship.
Yeah.
Would you mind talking to us? You're an Abu Dhabi champion. Why don't you walk us through your experience with ADCC?
Oh, I remember that many years before I was invited by Miguel to be, the pioneers of women that were invited for the first time to compete in ADCC. I had heard the stories about Remco Pardoel going to Abu Dhabi, and it was a big Disneyland, and you get watches, and there was a sheikh and whatever. And I was like, I want to go there too. But of course, women weren't allowed. So then we had, I think, 9/11, and because of that, it went to America. That's what I have assumed. I don't know if that's true. And then my trainer couldn't come because something with his company went wrong. And then Ron Nyquist had asked Bas Rutten to coach me. And I've met Bas in the Netherlands a few times, but I had no idea how popular he was in the States until I was in California, in LA, and he couldn't even walk I said meter, that's a metric system. I don't know, a few feet, whatever.
3.5 feet.
Yeah. And everybody wanted to get his autograph and on a picture with him. And it was crazy. Then I realized how popular he was. And then he took all the time out of his day to come to the event and coach me for 2 days. And he even drove us around so we could do a little bit of sightseeing in LA. And he was teaching me techniques in the hotel, in the corridor. And it was wonderful. And it was wonderful to be at such a big event, at a world championship that had so much grandeur. Is it English? I don't know. Mm-hmm. And see all these athletes competing, and it was like, to me, it was mind-blowing to be there and to be invited and be a part of that wonderful event. Yeah, and that's how I know Miguel.
Thank you very much. I remember the women always in that event always came with that chip on it, like they were groundbreaking, like there was something new and stuff. Talk about your competition that year, like who you fought in the tournament and stuff, because at least you're in your weight class.
Yeah, for sure. Megumi Yabushita. Nee, Yuki Kondo. I fought Yuki Kondo there.
Okay.
And I won on a leg lock, I remember. And I also, what they have with wrestling, heavy hands. I was almost knocking her out. I didn't do it on purpose, but I was like, bam, in her neck,
Mhm.
And I had a knee injury. That's what I had 2 times in my life a knee injury, and it was both at the ADCC competition. So weird, like. And I had to face the Australian girl, and I think I lost. And what I've learned from that is that I loved wrestling. I started to learn how to wrestle a bit, and I fell completely in love with wrestling. But with ADCC, when you took someone down, actually the fight just started. And that's what I needed to learn there, I hate people who jump guard. I did it myself too in the second fight with Cyborg. I didn't know what to do anymore. And a lot of people jump guard because they couldn't wrestle. And that's what you always see in a lot of times you see that in grappling, and especially in BJJ, of course. And but I loved it. It was a wonderful competition. And then the second time it was in Philadelphia, I remember. We got so drunk. That's what I remember. And I became third then. And there was also a girl that wanted to transition to a man. And that's what I also remember. And I knew that I threw her, I grabbed her neck, and I put my arm in her neck, and I threw her over me. I don't know how that throw is called, but and I remember I ended up between her legs, but she was at the end of her transition. So she was using testosterone. And I remember that I was in her guard, and I looked at her legs, and there were all these male hairs on her upper legs. And I was like, what the fuck is this? So that completely threw me off my game. And I think I've lost that one. And then the one after I won. And it was against a Japanese. She shoot, and I did her, I don't know, out of instinct. I think I did a weird submission, because later on someone came to me. She said, yeah, I'm a black belt under this, blah, blah, blah. And what kind of technique did you do? Because we don't know that technique. And I was like, I don't know. I don't know shit what I did. But again, so I became third. And I remember that one. I don't know who became first, and then the girl that wanted to transition to a man, she didn't show up because she was second and I was third. And then my heart broke for her. On the one side, like she felt so, I'm not supposed to be here, so I'm not picking up my trophy. And on the other hand, I was like, hey, if you want to become a dude and you're already at the end of your transition and you're on testosterone and you have hair on your legs like male have, then you should compete with the guys. That's what I know from ADCC Philadelphia, and the after party was really good.
At Trent, New Jersey. Yeah. Huh. Okay, well, here, we're done with your fight career. Obviously, we're going to revisit you after we're going to do like 100 podcasts with people, getting fighters to a certain point in their career. And then after 100, we're going to revisit and do the other half of their career. One more question in regards to the Netherlands, which, well, it's absolutely fascinating. Did you have any relationship with Don Plaas, who is head of rings from the Netherlands?
I never heard his name. Dan
He
Plaas?
died in prison. Yeah, Don Plaas. He's an old school guy.
And wait, Jan Plaas. I thought you said D-A-A-N, but you mean G-A-N.
Plaas, I knew was his last name, and I saw multiple spellings.
Yeah, no, he's a legend. I have never met him, but I know the stories about him. Yeah.
Could you give us one, just so the American people or actually Australians are almost neck and neck with Americans in terms of our viewers. If you could give us just a little bit of information on this gentleman.
Well, what I know is that, okay, I'm probably telling this wrong. You should talk with someone who's more into it. But a story that I have heard is that he was somewhere in the States or outside of the Netherlands for sure. And that he had so much money of criminal stuff in his house that he was sitting on it. Like, he was one of the big... Wat weet jij eigenlijk van hem? Gewoon een bekend verhaal. Wait, I'm getting some intel. Wat zeg je?
Heeft hij niet een palingroof?
Palingroof?
Ja.
Ken ik niet.
Oké. Maar hij... Jan Plaas...
Eel robbery.
We have a live fact checker. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah.
We're good with this.
Kom hier, leg het even uit.
No, come on in. Yeah, this is fascinating stuff. Marloes, here's the thing. we don't know these things. Like I am a little OCD and I have some mental issues in regards to like finding information. I spent hours trying to find stories on him and I couldn't even get his first name right because there's so little information, yet the stories and history involving him are plentiful, but it's only by word of mouth and nothing documented.
Yeah,
Would you mind introducing this gentleman?
Hello. This is my partner, Roemer.
Thank
He
you.
was
Thank
also
you.
training me at the latter part of my career.
Good, good. Would you mind telling us about that? Jan Plas, I think his name was.
Jan Plas. He's one of the founders of Dutch kickboxing. And you had a few gyms in Amsterdam. Vos Gym, Majiro Gym, Shokoriki. And he was one of the leaders of Majiro Gym, I thought.
Yeah.
Jan Plas. So there was always a kickboxing competition because they were from karate. They went to Thailand and they went back to the Netherlands again, and they make their own system. It was a kickboxing system because
he's one of the founding fathers of kickboxing. But what is it? They're not interested in that. What is his criminal activity? That's what
Thank you.
Nothing sportsmanship.
I don't know that much about his criminal activities. I do know a lot of no, not a lot. I do know some stuff about these schools, kickboxing schools, Thai boxing schools. They ruled a little bit Amsterdam, and also
like the red district to make
Yeah,
sure.
right. So they handled the security for the red light district.
Yeah, exactly. Stuff like, but also like drugs trading and stuff like that. That's what
ecstasy in particular.
A big drugs trader, Jan Plas. That's what I've heard. I've never met him.
Yeah, he died in prison.
Yeah, and I do think they went into prison because of a robbery, and they call it the eel robbery.
Eel was like a fish.
Okay, the eel.
We eat it a lot in the Netherlands.
Yeah, and it's really expensive. So that's the
for
only.
Real. It was a robbery on eels.
Yes.
Fish.
So, yeah.
Oh.
I heard it. So it's.
They got busted.
They got busted. Yeah.
So he's like the Lee Murray of fish.
Yeah.
So we've got really cool stories for you, but we don't know shit about actually.
No. So this is just a story where they heard.
Next time I've got more intel for you on Jan Plas.
Marloes, I have got Bob Schriber broken down, and we're just gonna wait until he kind of gets very comfortable, and then we're hit. I've got names and dates, and I'm just, I just want to get a reaction, but he doesn't know how to work Zoom.
He knows everything. Yeah.
He knows way better than me how. He can tell you a lot of stories.
Yeah, he's been in Japan cornering people that were killed like a few weeks later.
Yeah, no, that was Hans Nijman. Yeah.
Yeah, we're trying to get him. We're trying to get him.
He's a wonderful guy.
So let's talk Bas Rutten.
I go again.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Even in the early, and I'm done after this, Miguel. So even in the early days of Dutch mixed martial arts, he was doing commentary
with Mauro Ranello.
Yeah, he was almost like born into the commentary chair. How does he get there so fast?
Well, he was doing commentary for Pride, I think. So I think that went from America that he was asked to do that. But probably, if you ask me, he already fought a lot in Japan. And you have the story that he has the L and the R on his hands in pancrase because he got so nervous that he forgot what was left and right. So I think it was his connection in Japan that they asked him to do that. I mean, come on, if you meet him once, he's such an entertaining guy. There's hardly anyone that I know that's so entertaining.
Charismatic. He's very charismatic.
Yeah, and I mean, like what he did from one time. Okay, then I'll quit also. So he did he was in the Netherlands and big jet lag, and he did in my gym in the east of the Netherlands a clinic. But I was living already in Amsterdam, so I drove back with him and his ex-manager. And I said, "Oh, Roemer, the guy you just saw, would love to meet you." But he was really, really tired. I'm ashamed that I asked him at this point in time. But what he did, and the cell phones, I don't know, something went wrong. And this is many years ago. So end of the story is that Bas Rutten was sitting in my room, in my house, drinking a special beer, waiting for Roemer to come back so he could greet Roemer. I mean, that's the kind of a guy that Bas Rutten is. I mean, love him to death.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
And then he had a big jet lag, and he was exhausted. Yeah.
Wow. Marloes, we've had you over an hour and a half. Thank you so much.
Thank you too.
We absolutely reserve the right to have you back for the rest of your career.
You have. Yeah.
But you're a true legend. You're a true legend. Like your fight against Cyborg, it was heroic. Your efforts, heroic, and it was kind of like fighting a giant, and the David and Goliath, and you were David, and you had no fear, and like as a fight fan watching that, like it was very emotional for me as a fan to watch something like that take place. So thank you.
And I think another feather in your cap too is that you really are you cover almost 2 generations, because the stuff in Japan, you're doing like real no holds barred, no rule, less rules, no weight classes, and you emerged number 1. And then in Strikeforce, now it's real rules, gloves, weight classes, a very different sport, and you made it to the top of both of them. Definitely a pioneer and
Hall of Famer, Miguel.
A Hall of Fame fighter.
100%, yes.
Everything you've done for us.
First ballot.
Thank you. I mean, these aren't words that I hear every day. So, and it comes from people who know. There are a lot of people come to me and I'm like, yeah, whatever, goes 1 year, another year out. But coming from you, it hits my heart. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much.
Marloes, we'll talk to you again in the very near future. Thank you.
Wow. So, Lights Out Podcast, another deep dive into books, another historic deep dive into books, if I might toot our own horn here. Mike, what do you think? Marloes Coenen.
Well, I think we accomplished what we set out for. And it's not like she was a tough egg to crack. Like, she's obviously very personable, well-spoken. English is not her first language. And, you'd be kind of hard-pressed to find people in this country that speak as well as she does. Now, but let's look at our trajectory. The majority of our audience is from the United States. So, we've done a real good job here in the Midwest, and we're kind of starting to branch to the coasts. We've had a couple fighters from Canada. We've had Brad Pickett from Europe. We're working on the UK guys. They're not real apt to come over to us. And right now we're going to start opening up the Netherlands. We tried Sweden, got shut down a couple times. It is what it is. But we're going to start targeting the Netherlands and Australia, obviously our second largest group of people that watch this podcast. So we're going to start kind of spreading things out on the international side. And if we're going to go into a new territory, you got to start with the best, at least the pioneers. So hopefully we can get Dirty Bob Schriber at some point, because that would be mind blowing, at least like to us.
Yeah, no, I think this one accomplishes that. As our second female interview here on the podcast. Tara LaRose, I think, is an appropriate first. So I mentioned it to Marloes off camera, and she was totally cool with Tara. Hey, say hi to her and everything like that. And she was very happy to also be the second person that was, coming in onto the women's side here. So we're going to keep going down that path. The women's history really needs to be covered, just like the men's history. And that's what we'll do. So,
and Miguel, you got to say, you also got to kind of look at it this way. When Marloes Coenen lost to, come on. She fought for you a couple times.
For me, Roxanne,
which I thought, I don't know how I'm able to brain right there. When Marloes Coenen lost to Roxanne, we had discussed this. We said, wait a minute, that looks like a world title fight. And when Tara beats Roxanne, that's when we said, that's it. That is like, if you were to put a start date on a woman's world title, even though a strap may have not been wrapped around their waist, it was between the three of those. You could argue Marloes, Roxanne, Tara, and then it kind of, goes from there. She's absolutely a pioneer in women's mixed martial art history. And man, it's a feather in our cap for sure.
Yeah. And I think for the fan, if you go back and watch her fights, like she's
heroic.
She's more technical than any of the Dutch fighters that we're going to be accustomed to, like any of those guys. Like Ivel, Overeem got technical there later on in his career, but they were all striker based, and this girl was a whiz on the ground. So this was an interview that I had a lot of fun doing, and I'm grateful for. So I'm going to cap the night off with a fantasy version of Lights Out Bourbon. I don't drink anymore, but I'm going to have a nightcap.
Miguel, I think you're sober. You're sober too.
Yeah, I'm sober. So I'm pushing.
You're cooking first. Get the alcohol out.
Yeah, I want Chris to put out like an O'Doul's version, of whiskey. But Cons Fine Wines in .com in Indiana is shipping across the country, and Chris's bourbon's knocking it out of the park, so I recommend it. And Mike's got some jiu-jitsu stuff for us.
Okay, here we go. All right, so Diamond Sportsbook. Here, I shouldn't even say that. BetDSI.eu. Ladies and gentlemen, please throw a couple dollars on there. They will match 50% up to $1,000 deposited. And you can bet on lots of sports. Gambling is an addiction, but it's an addiction that you can win lots of money at. Just want to kind of point that out. I've got February 5th, Tampa, Florida. If you guys like ground karate, you're into jiu-jitsu, please sign up to our jiu-jitsu tournament, world-class grappling on Smooth Comp. December 17th, I am in Chicago. There's a bar called 115 Bourbon Street, Ignite FC. December 17th, I am doing a color commentary. Please stop by, say hello. We're going to be doing t-shirts and stuff like that very soon. For people that comment on our YouTube page, as well as leave reviews on iTunes, it'd be awesome if you guys could get ahead, like, share, subscribe. If we don't tell you that, no one will do it. And we appreciate everybody that's listening.
Check out the full interview on iTunes, Spotify, and all major podcast platforms.